Welcome to the deep dive. So you've shared a really compelling set of materials this time. We're going to jump into this world surrounding a character named Calicress.
Yeah.
And it looks like it's a pretty wild ride. We're talking ancient mysteries, some seriously advanced tech, and a whole web of international plots.
Absolutely. It's quite a mix. Your sources introduce, this manuscript that could potentially reshape technology as we know it.
Right.
And then there's this shadowy network of operatives. They seem to work outside the usual rules.
Uh-huh.
And of course, this dangerous figure, Mason Laskfell,
Hmm.
he really feels like the central villain in all this.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a potent mix of action and, well, mystery.
And just the little details scattered throughout are frankly fascinating. We've got mentions of ancient cryptography linking back to, get this, the Tarim Basin mummies.
Yeah, those ones.
High-speed satellite tracking,
Oh,
and Kala herself, this main character, with abilities that just sound, well, extraordinary.
right. Her instincts are apparently better than a dolphin's.
Yeah.
And her eyesight is described as, like, penetrating.
Exactly. Plus, there's mention of a mind-reading sequencer, which sounds terrifying, and this idea that cracking certain codes could spear civilization years ahead.
Okay, let's try to unpack this.
Let's do it.
Our goal, I think, for this deep dive is to really get a handle on the core conflicts, the mysteries around Kala. Who is she? Where do these abilities come from? And what are the big threats she's up against, especially from this Lastfell guy and these operatives?
Those are definitely the key questions that jump out from the sources. So maybe starting with Kala herself, she's clearly different.
Yeah.
Her best friend calls her abilities a gift. Doctors say they're rare. The government sees them as a weapon.
And someone else, presumably Laskfell or someone like him, just thinks she's trouble, enough trouble to want her dead. It's like everyone's projecting onto her, trying to define what she is based on what she can do.
So what can she do exactly? The sources mention incredible physical abilities, this almost like a sixth sense for danger.
Heightened instincts. And that penetrating eyesight you mentioned, it really pushes the envelope of, normal human capability.
What's interesting is how that connects, or maybe doesn't connect clearly, to her background. It's described as unclear.
Deliberately vague, it feels like. There are hints about an orphanage, this mysterious Cress's family,
Yeah.
who seem linked to the Hadrian's manuscript.
And she somehow controls a multi-million-pound trust fund with no obvious source.
Yeah, that pops up too. It all points to a past that's been, well, hidden, maybe deliberately concealed.
And it wasn't like she was just sitting on this money. She was active, a cultural agent for some undercover agency, ISTF, International Security Task Force.
Right, and apparently she was the one who deciphered the Hadrian's manuscript, which, the sources say, is written in an unknown human language.
That's quite a specific skill set, deciphering unknown ancient languages for a secret agency.
Indeed. And that act, the deciphering, seems to be a major turning point. It apparently kicked off a journey of discovery for her.
Which led her to distrust the government she worked for.
Exactly. So this Hadrian's manuscript, it feels like the absolute core of the story.
Definitely. It's described as this artifact with a script, a language that supposedly doesn't exist. And cracking it has huge implications. Technology, maybe, map making.
Yeah, there are links mentioned to the Pythagorean theorem in GPS, which is an interesting connection. It sounds like it could unlock some really fundamental secrets.
And there's this line from Stan Kress, who we find out is likely her father, saying she and the manuscript are linked like a cord linked at conception.
Wow. That suggests something really deep, doesn't it? Maybe even biological. And we know Laskfell is after her because of the manuscript. That tells you how valuable it must be.
The story then jumps geographically, doesn't it? From London, suddenly we're following Kala and her team to China, to the Urumqi Museum looking at mummies.
Right, they believe these mummies hold some kind of clue. And what's interesting there is the curator, Hongui Zhu, he's skeptical about their origins. He even suggests they might be Caucasian.
Which could tie back to the manuscript's origins, maybe, if it's not from a known local culture.
Potentially. It adds another layer of mystery.
Yeah.
And their search goes deeper into the Taklamakan Desert.
The Sea of Death sounds inviting.
Yeah. They're heading towards a place called Mazar Ta in Hotan, which is apparently linked to her mother.
Who abandoned her at birth. So this isn't just about the manuscript. It's deeply personal for Kala, too.
Absolutely. And while they're out there, they have this escort, frontier defense guys in infrared camouflage.
Which immediately makes her ally, Nash, suspicious. Why the high-tech camo? Are they protectors or something else?
That's the question, isn't it? Protection or surveillance, or maybe worse. And layered onto that danger is Kala trying to figure out her own past, why her mother left her.
Okay, let's pivot to the main threat, or one of them anyway. Mason Laskfell. He's not just some random bad guy.
No, described as a high-status international felon, supposedly locked up tight in Belmarsh prison in London.
But not really contained.
Yeah.
ISTF and the operatives thought he was like, poof, long gone. But he's back.
And he's dangerous. He's using some kind of super sophisticated virus. It can apparently access and attack global tech networks.
Which points to a huge vulnerability in, well, everything digital, and he can wield that power from prison.
It seems so. It's pretty chilling. And then there's the mind-reading sequencer.
Right. Based on brain activity. That's straight out of sci-fi, but it taps into real anxieties about future tech and privacy.
Definitely. And he's not just theoretical. He's orchestrating attacks. The source mentions one on Nash's mountain place with a tank and a bazooka.
A tank. Okay, so he has serious resources and isn't afraid to use them. Ruthless.
And there's more. He seems to be using some kind of memory sedative or similar tech,
Yeah.
making people forget things.
Like Veda Westall, the head of the British Museum, and someone else's ex-husband. So he's manipulating memories too.
Yeah, suggests he's not just after information, but actively messing with people's minds to cover his tracks or achieve his goals.
And the connections keep spiraling. He's linked somehow to kill his mother, Nicole Kress. He wants something she has, or knows.
Uh-huh. And, get this, he's apparently telepathic.
Telepathic, seriously, on top of everything else, that makes him an incredibly difficult opponent for Kala.
Extremely. Which brings us to these operatives. This ISTF group Kala used to work for.
Right. Described as an undercover group that intervenes in global criminal investigations, they supposedly recruit wunderkinder.
Yeah, people with exceptional abilities, both physical and mental. And their funding is, well, hidden, off the books.
Totally secret. Nash digs into their cyber setup and finds it's incredibly advanced.
Which makes sense if they're recruiting geniuses and operating in the shadows. But there seems to be tension, right? Between the operatives and non-operatives.
Yeah, Callus seems kind of caught between worlds there.
And they have these labs developing things like memory repressants and silicon chips powered by carbonados.
Carbonados. Sounds exotic. Probably fictional tech, but it emphasizes their cutting-edge, maybe even speculative research.
And their history is apparently tied directly to the Hadrius manuscript. They've guarded it for centuries, it seems.
But maybe not all on the same page. Allegra warns Nash about someone named Vortigern, suggesting internal factions or disagreements.
That's a strong possibility. It wouldn't be a secret organization without some internal intrigue, I suppose.
So amidst all this danger and secrecy, Kala does have allies. Nash Shields, the ex-NSA guy. He's clearly very protective of her.
Seems like a key relationship, maybe romantic, maybe just deeply loyal. And then there's Jack.
Her tech friend, also from ISTF. Good to have a tech whiz on your side in this kind of fight.
Absolutely. And Veda Westall at the British Museum, more of a mentor figure, sadly becomes a target.
Right. And Allegra Driscoll, high up in ISTF. She starts off wary of Nash, but seems to become an ally later.
Yeah, the dynamics shift. And then the big family reveals Sam Kress is her father, with his own history with the operatives and her mother.
Then Nicole Kress, the mother, she's alive.
Huge reveal. And she has this complicated past involving the operatives, Mason Laskfell, and even MI6, British intelligence.
Wow. So she's holding key pieces of the puzzle about the manuscript, about Mason's plans. It really is a family drama playing out on a massive global scale.
Definitely global. The story jumps from London to Xinjiang in China, then across Europe. Paris, Santorini, Spain are mentioned.
And you have all these agencies involved, implicitly or explicitly. British ones like the Museum, ISTF, MI5, MI6, U.S. with the NSA, the Chinese military presence.
It really underlines the international stakes. This isn't just personal fight.
And cybersecurity is obviously a massive theme, the potential for global networks to just crash.
Yeah, that threat hangs over everything. And the hunt for the manuscript, everyone's motives, it feels deeply tangled up in, global power plays.
Okay, so if we try to boil this down,
Yeah.
what are the key takeaways from all these sources?
Well, first, it's clearly a high-stakes techno-thriller. Centered on Kala Kress, this woman with extraordinary gifts, a mysterious past, all tied to this ancient manuscript and the shadowy operatives.
And she's thrown into this incredibly dangerous cat-and-mouse game with Mason Laskfell. He wants the manuscript secrets, wants to control global tech. using cyber warfare, maybe even mind reading.
Right. And her trying to figure out her own origins, who the operatives really are. That's happening while she's dealing with the immediate threat from Mason. She has to face her past to fight for the future, basically.
She's got allies, thankfully. Nash, Jack. But trust is a huge issue, isn't it? With the operatives being so secretive and all the hidden agendas tied to her own family.
Exactly. Lines are definitely blurred. And ultimately, the whole story seems to be digging into some big questions.
Mm.
The limits of human ability, the ethics of advanced tech, the power of the past,
Mm.
all wrapped up in this package of espionage in action.
It really leaves you thinking, doesn't it? Especially about Kala's lineage, these almost superhuman abilities she has, and what the operatives might be capable of, technologically, historically.
Yeah.
What are the true limits of human potential? And maybe more importantly, who gets to decide how that kind of power, if it exists, should be used? Is it individuals, governments, or maybe some hidden group pulling the strings in the shadows?
That's a really provocative thought to end on. It definitely captures the core tension.
Yeah.
So this deep dive,
Mm.
it definitely paints a picture of a really rich, exciting world around Calicress,
Mm.
full of mystery, action, fascinating tech ideas.
Absolutely. The stakes feel incredibly high with everything she's facing, her past, her powers, Laskfell.
Makes you wonder what happens next for her, doesn't it?
It really does. Feels like there's a lot more story there. Well, thanks for sharing these sources. It's been fascinating to explore.